Hello, everyone. This is the random podcast of Awesomeness.
With your friendly neighborhood hosts.
Yes. I am Shadow Wolf.
And I am Gurdette14.
This week we played the game The Next Tetris for the PS1.
Indeed we did. And I actually played it this time.
Yes, we did play it. Not that there's too much to this game. Tetris is it was originally developed by Alexei Pajitnov, which I'm probably pronouncing wrong, but you can always correct me in the comments, in the Soviet Union. And it was released June 6, in 1984. This was like a year right before the Nintendo came out. So that's just an idea of how old it is.
Yes, Tetris is old as fuck. Perhaps slightly older.
And for those of you that have an original Game Boy, you would actually know that Mario did not come with the original Game Boy. It was actually Tetris that came with it.
Indeed it was.
So that was like the major selling point for Tetris. That was like when it became really big, is when the Game Boy was released. Fast forward into the future a little bit, we're on the PlayStation 1, and there's now the next Tetris, which sounds very futuristic.
Even though it's actually the, 17th installment after the first Tetris?
Right. Something like that. Tetris has been released time and time again, and this time it's on the PlayStation 1. So, as we said, we played this game. And this relatively simple game. For the most part, it handles just like the old Tetris, only there's a few new things implemented into it.
For example, you can now technically rotate blocks infinitely, so long as, they're not directly touching it.
And even then, you have like some hang time.
Yeah, you do have some hang time, which is a good thing because it's one of those things where you don't have to buy an engagement ring for your placement of blocks anymore.
Right. The other thing is you're going to start to notice that the puzzles have added things to them. Like, you're not just going to drop them into the bottom of the screen like you normally would. There are actual, how should I say, blockades already in place.
Yes. The goal of this particular Tetris is a lot like the Dr. Mario game. Actually,
it's
scarily
really
similar to the Dr. Mario game.
Yes. So yes, there are a lot of similarities, yet it is very different.
Yes.
As you would in regular Tetris, you have to fill one row. Actually, I shouldn't say row. One column. Well, actually, I was
It is row.
It is row. I got that right the first time. So you fill one row in order to destroy that row as you keep building up and up. And as you continue to get through the levels, not that there are noticeable level changes at all, except for like the speed of how things go. And that's pretty much how it gets harder. Just speed regulation.
Yes, the speed becomes much faster as you go on, although it does scale up relative to your current skill, or at least current level in the game. However, the longer it takes you, at least in the normal game, because there are multiple game modes, which is something that players of the original Tetris may actually find a bit odd.
Not that it's a bad thing.
Oh no, having multiple game modes is actually a godsend for this title.
I mean, you could probably go all day just playing the mode that was intended for the game itself, which would get tedious after a while, but it's actually kind of refreshing to have other modes as well. What else do you want to say about it, Gerda?
The overall setup of the game is actually very weird. We may as well start getting into a few things. For example, this game does not have music. It says it has music. There is a background music slider in one of the menus, but no, there's no music in this game, and it's really weird.
Maybe for you it didn't. I actually did watch a few videos as well as play it, and there was music.
I find that odd because I didn't have any music while I was playing, so maybe my copy was just bugged out.
Perhaps so.
There were still sound effects, including the female chick that the first few times that you're playing the game pauses the game for a moment to tell you about things, which is actually pretty helpful when you're first encountering situations.
Yes. Not that there's really much to worry about in this game at all. And for any seasoned Tetris players, you're going to quickly grasp the idea of how to play it. I mean, it's Tetris with extra stuff added, pretty much.
Yeah, that's pretty much how the game is. Mind if we start actually going into things, though, dude?
Sure.
Alright, first thing that you have to know. For the main game, for the next Tetris, there are actual levels of progression, and in order to progress through the next Tetris, as it were, you have to complete a board 3 times. On the lower difficulty levels, this isn't so bad. Matter of fact, I managed to get up to level 5 with very little problems. But unfortunately, Tetris is not my puzzle game, and I mean that it is actually rather unfortunate because, in all seriousness, if you haven't played Tetris, you need to go play Tetris.
Right.
It's part of your gaming heritage, as DC Scrab would say. However, the level progression mode is pretty much the only deep thing about this game. Everything else is pretty copy paste from other Tetris games, or even other puzzle games. Score, attack, and marathon function exactly as they're supposed to. But one of the main things that this Tetris brings that Tetris games before did not, except maybe Dr. Mario, was the ability. Well, not the ability, but the presence of blocks that split up, depending on their colors.
Right.
And this brings a whole new metagame to Tetris as a whole, because figuring out how to maneuver those particular blocks is incredibly important for you not killing yourself.
Yes, if you, as Gerda was saying, there's blocks with multicolors, and the multicolor blocks are the ones that you will have a piece that can drop, and if you can position them in the right way, you can actually solve the puzzle further down, actually. Which is actually a big improvement to the original.
I don't want to say it's an improvement, but it's definitely a game changer.
It is a game changer. Because before, all there was you have your pieces, and if you get a row done, it's just done, and you keep building up. You can't go further down, and with this, you can go to a spot that you couldn't reach because it was blocked off by another tile.
Right. Now you have a small chance of redeeming yourself when you clear a line, because assuming that another color is invading invading a similar color is invading above that line and is a single space, it'll drop down, and it might even separate from the rest of the pack depending on how the board looks.
Right. And I found this useful as I've been able to actually fill in rows this way when I already had a whole jumbled mess, because I admittedly am not the best at Tetris either.
Then I apologize for picking this particular title then. Yes, I was the guy that picked this. The guy that is not good at puzzle games, except for the ones that I have practiced my butt off in.
Now, I will say, it's not like I hate Tetris. I actually do enjoy it quite a bit, despite me not being good at it.
Actually, the same can be said for me. I actually do enjoy Tetris. I just know I'm horrible at it.
This is one of those games that you can play and play. Even if you're a bad player, you can play it for a long time and it doesn't really matter very much.
Right.
Now, since there really isn't much that we haven't covered, I think we can move on to things like graphics and such.
Alright. For one, the graphics in this game pretty much look like you would expect a PS1 port of Tetris to look like.
Yeah.
Oh, before we actually get too deep into graphics, I want to talk about the fact that both the next Tetris and the original Tetris are here for those of you that want to play the original Tetris instead, and you are welcome to do that. I'll instead play the next Tetris, which I find to be at least a bit more enjoyable to me.
And they're both nice to have. If you get tired of one, you can always go to the other.
Yep.
This is nice to have, like, a challenge in there. Now, as we were saying, graphically, it's pretty much how you would expect a PlayStation 1 game to be.
Or at least a PS1 port of Tetris.
Right.
Personally, when I look at the PS1 at least late, well, this is really early PS1. This is 99 for Christ's sake. Ugh. Do you remember what other games came out in 99 for the PS1?
I'm sure there had to have been at least a Crash Bandicoot game that came out.
If there was, it was Crash Bandicoot 1, because Cortex, I think, was a 1.
Right. I mean, it was kind of funny when I started the game, because I haven't played a PlayStation game in a long time, and while I was playing, I thought, oh, the intro to this game looks pretty cool.
Yes, the intro is really cool. Takes forever to get through. Why can't I skip most of these sponsorships? Oh God.
And then you get to the game and it's like...
And it's like, yeah, it looks exactly like a PS1 port of a Game Boy Color game would look.
Right. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
For the most part, no. But you get the feeling that they could have done more. I mean, Yahoo Towers technically looks more complicated than this.
That's true. Now, I know that you didn't really get to hear the music. The soundtrack in this game is not the original soundtrack for the most part. There are times where it is reminiscent in the background of like other music, but it's not. They don't try to make it too prominent. I think they wanted to try to give the game a new soundtrack, which I will admit I actually do like the original.
Everyone loves the original Tetris. Do 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 do.
And I can actually play that on like harmonica and stuff.
I wish I had any sort of musical talent like that.
But the music itself it's not bad music. It's not memorable either, though. I mean, I could play it for a while, but it's nothing too special.
after a while, since there wasn't any music to the game, I just started supplying my own tunes. But again, if it's because my copy was bugged out, then you know that falls to that is my fault.
Well, yes and no. Now you said you heard the sound effects at least.
Yeah,
so.
I heard all the sound effects at least, and although I'm not entirely sure if I ever managed to hear the sound effect for Tetris, I was already muting the sounds long before I started really trying to get into the game.
Sound effects are pretty basic sound effects, what you'd probably expect.
Yeah, that's technically the tagline for this game. What did you expect? If you expected PS1 Tetris, well, yeah, that's what you got. You don't get to complain. It's PS1 Tetris.
Right. I mean, I guess you could complain if you really wanted to, but it's
you
not
shouldn't.
Make much point.
It's exactly what you were looking for. PS1 Tetris. I know it was exactly what I was looking for when I picked it out.
Right. I mean, if you wanted to, if you were looking to play Tetris, and you're like, oh, they have one on the PlayStation. It's pretty much what you got. Let's see here. Now, I will have to say, Tetris is probably one of the most well-known games.
Do you think this port actually does Tetris the justice it deserves? Because I actually think that is a pretty big, concern when it comes to porting games. Are the ported games actually as good, or maybe even better than the game that they're porting?
That's a really good question, Gerdat, and thinking about it, I think they did a decent job. I think maybe they could have done a better job. I enjoyed it for what it was. I think it's a good representation of Tetris. I don't know what they could have done to make it better, but then again, I think it's hard to improve on the idea of Tetris.
I always forget that. You know what? You're right. I would find it pretty hard to actually improve Tetris, specifically because there's not really much to Tetris.
Right.
I mean, yes, it is a pretty entertaining puzzle game, but aside from being a pretty entertaining puzzle game, there's not a lot you can do in Tetris. Well, there's not a lot you could change in Tetris without drastically changing the formula. And the changes that they did make for this are enough to at least somewhat change the Tetris formula.
Right.
It's not really a bad thing that they changed the Tetris formula, but it is a thing that they did.
So, do you agree that this is a good port, or what is your thought on it?
I think that this is a good port of Tetris, but I'm not entirely sure how good a port of Tetris it is.
So I think we're pretty much agreed on that then. And we invite you to play it and see for yourself.
Yes, we do. The opening cinematic implies that there's a story in this game. There isn't. It's still just Tetris.
It's just Tetris. Even though the cinematic is...
The cinematic is pretty kick-ass, but yeah, it's still just Tetris. Nice.
Overall, it's Tetris. That's what it is.
Yes. I really should have picked out a more complex puzzle game, but the only one that I would have that I think that I would have gone with would have been, you know, maybe Tower Master, and Tower Master is just confusing.
Heck, we could have even done Missile Command. That would have been fun.
I've never played Missile Command.
Well, then maybe next time that's what I will pick to have you try.
Perhaps. I kind of hope not, though, because we just did 2 puzzle games in a row.
That's true, so that might come in the future.
Alright, How about we give scores then? Because clearly we don't have that much to say
Right.
about this. I apologize, viewers. I thought I really could, talk about this because I do enjoy this game. I do, and it's not a bad port of Tetris, but it's still pretty much just a Tetris port.
Right. There's not much to say about Tetris. If you've played Tetris, you've played Tetris, and that's about as far as it goes.
Right.
You know how it plays, you know the music, you know all that. I mean, besides, like, the few different things that they added into this, like being able to infinitely flip the pieces and move them around.
Which is a godsend for a large part, but...
Yes, it is. It is nice. It's pretty much just Tetris, just a little different.
Right.
So, it sounds like you want to do ratings then.
Yeah.
Overall, I thought this was a decent port, and when it comes to my favorite games, Tetris is probably like in the top 30, I want to say.
Tetris doesn't score nearly that high for me, in all seriousness. Any copy of Tetris has never been, up in my top 30.
I mean, like, if I'm just looking for a game to, like, fool around with for a while...
I will grant that Tetris is amazing at being a pick-up-and-play title.
Right, you can just... It has replayability that I don't think most games actually have.
It has replayability that RPGs struggle to get.
Right.
Which is saying something.
So it's just like one of those games that you're like, I'm bored, I want to play something, you play Tetris, that's what you do. Saying that, I enjoyed this game. I just wish I was better at it. I'm gonna have to give it maybe a 7 out of 10.
And with that, yeah, I have to agree with Shadow. This is definitely what I would consider a 7 out of 10 game. It does enough with the formula to actually make it worth experimenting with, but it's still just Tetris. And I do enjoy Tetris, but not nearly as much as I would if I was actually really good at it. I really wish I was better at Tetris, but I want to spend the hours upon days that it takes to get good at Tetris. Yes, people, it takes a long damn time to get good at Tetris.
And there are actually videos online of really good players, so
yes,
if you want to
players
see...
that have reached the mythical level 100.
Yes. So yeah, if you want to see that, go and see it. It's pretty crazy. So, that's pretty much all we have to say about this game.
Indeed it is. Crap. Anything else we need to talk about?
I'm guessing we're probably about 18 minutes or so into this.
At the moment, we're close to like. At the moment, we're just past 20. I don't actually have the thing up to tell. So.
Okay, so. Yeah, this is probably going to be one of our
shorter ones.
Yeah, shorter ones, because it's a very short game. There really isn't any story to it, so there's just moving the puzzle pieces around. You can't do much more than that. We thank you guys for listening, and we'll just have to pick a longer game next time.
Yes. Alright guys, with that, we are the Random Podcast of Awesomeness, consisting of Gurdette14 and
Shadow Wolf, so thanks for listening, guys.
Be safe.